Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, 5011 fam.
I don't know. I don't know what that was.
I don't know, but I
What
like
was
it. It was kind of giving. I was like, okay, where we going with that?
that?
Y'all, we are back with another episode of the 5011 Chronicles. It's Dee Dee, it's Jay, doing what we do,
All
having
up in my area.
conversations all up in your area, every area code, having conversations that spark conversations. Y'all know what we do here. It's another episode of the 5011 Reviews, y'all. You know how we do. We've been talking about different shows. We're going to get into some music later on this season, too. And we're going to have some kikis throughout. So y'all get ready. We've kind of planned out a little bit more this season. We're really excited about it. But this episode, we want a little bit different for the kids. We got something a little different for you. Something that a little bit different for the kids, you know? Give you something a little different. We're going to be reviewing Queen Charlotte from Netflix. So for those who don't know, it's part of the Bridgerton universe. So get ready, buckle in, get ready for a good old chat, a good old key, doing what we do here at the 5011 Chronicles. Wow. Oh my goodness. So before we actually talk about Queen Charlotte, I just have to say I am a fan of Bridgerton.
I am too.
I loves me, and it's so weird. Okay, so it's not weird because I think I have to get this off of my chest, and I have to say this about myself. Full disclosure, transparency. I know this is what we do here. At my heart, at my core, I'm no longer a hopeless romantic. I am a hopeful romantic. Used to be a hopeless romantic, now I'm a hopeful romantic. And I love romance. I love like rom-coms are some of my favorite movies. I love love, you know, and actually it's perfect because Dee in her first Dee Dee's Laboratory was talking about being a millennial lover boy and lover girl. And it just like this, I think kind of puts a bow on that, kind of ties it back together. It's like a full circle because typically I don't watch a whole bunch of like hardcore true romances. Like I'll watch a rom-com here and there, watch things that have romance as a subplot or, you know, what do they call them? Like I said, a rom-com, a romantic comedy, something like that. I'll do that. But typically I don't watch or read straight romances. But Bridgerton is like a pure romance. Like it's a novel, a series of novels, where it goes through this family. So for those who don't know, it goes through the love of these different members of a family, the Bridgerton family. And it's during like the 15th, 16th century. This is pre US like liberation from the royals. This is pre that, and they're going through the standard like courting and all of the old school thing, and like you have to the time instead of the town, the time and you know being a part of the establishment and what it looks like to be in such a structured society where there's so many rules on who can communicate with each other and marrying for class and all, I mean it's layered, so it's really like a historical romance. But it's so well done. This is part of like Shondaland. So that's what got my attention when Bridgerton came out.
Shonda don't be missing.
Shonda does not miss. I think I've watched everything.
I literally watched it because it was her.
Because it was Shonda. Same.
The only reason why I watched
Same.
it.
I mean, like, I can't find a single show. I mean, Grey's hits. Like, love Grey's. Station 19 was awesome. It just ended. Loved that.
It was a lot.
Private Practice was good. It was different, but it was good. I mean, How to Get Away with Murder, Scandal, no misses yet. Like, no misses yet. So Bridgerton coming out, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of interested to see what's going to happen here. And, you know, maybe we can do, because the third season is about to drop part 2. It'll probably be out by the time this episode comes out. Maybe we'll do like a Bridgerton, like, review of all 3 seasons and the romances and the hot messery that goes on. But they did a spinoff after the first 2 seasons because of how successful the show was. The show had just done so well, and people were so engulfed with the drama and the love. But in particular, people were obsessed with the Queen.
Yes.
The Queen is easily one of the most fascinating, entertaining characters of the show. Easily. And stylish. Easily. Easily one of the most like fabulous characters on the show. And when I heard that there was going to be a Queen Charlotte spinoff, I was like, ooh, now that I have to see. I have to see that. Because it's also not part of the Bridgerton book universe. She didn't write a Queen Charlotte book. So this was something that was completely original, completely based off of fan feedback, fan excitement. Let's give the backstory of the Queen and the King. So that's a little setup on the show. But when I tell y'all this show comes out and just exceeded all expectations.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm ready for Queen Charlotte land because Bridgerton's cute. Bridgerton's
Bridgerton is
cute.
cute. Hmm.
Queen Charlotte was my jaw right there. That 6 episodes was not enough. Six
It wasn't
episodes was
enough. No, I
not
agree.
enough for me.
I would have
It
loved to
was
see
so rare. It was
more.
so much. It was so dynamic. The cast
Hmm.
was diverse. I just loved all of it. I loved every
Hmm.
piece.
And a lot of that, like, I think that's what they've done well with Bridgerton as a series, is they've managed to get diversity really, really like perfect. Like very
And
few
be
shows
realistic
get and
about
be
it
realistic
and
about,
address it.
like because so to give context, if you think about 15th, 16th century Britain, first of all,
Mhm.
it's not like some integrated society. We know that to be fact. And that's what makes this a historical romantic fiction, is that this show, when they created the show, because the show and the book are separate. The book was white characters because it was based on that era. But the show, with Shonda at the helm, there was no way it was going to be strictly just an all white cast,
Right.
an all white show. I mean, we know Shonda that she always has a black female lead. Always. At least one. Always. And
Okay.
so we know with it being Shonda that there's going to be some kind of creative spin, and the creative spin was almost like up until Queen Charlotte, they didn't really address race. They didn't talk about race up until Queen Charlotte. So you see this, I mean, really diverse cast. You're seeing all type. You're seeing biracial. You're seeing black. You're seeing white. You're seeing Asian. You're seeing every walk of life being represented in the Tyne. And the Tyne is considered the part of society that is. I don't want to say that they're all upper class, but there's layers to this upper classness. But
Mhm.
they're more of like the lords and the ladies, and they have the
Mhm.
titles, and they have the land that they're given by the king and queen. So this is land that's bestowed upon them by the royalty. And so they kind of are like this pulled apart group of people who get to live in this kind of special part of the land where they almost mingle with the king and queen and with royalty. And some of them are royalty as well. So it's interesting because I never imagined watching Bridgerton and being able to relate and see myself in characters, but they did it so beautifully. Having so, like, even with the first season, which this is not a Bridgerton review, but I just have to say this. With the first season, the bachelor, the main man, the leading man was a black man. And
Yeah.
I loved that so much. Like the leading man, the heartthrob, the main guy that the show is all about
And
was
baby,
a
the
black
people was
man.
loving him.
And he was like, after that,
The
and I
people
mean,
ain't getting
we'll
nothing
never
him.
see him in another season because he's honestly gone on to bigger and brighter things since then. He never imagined Bridgerton to blow up into
They
what it
were
blew up.
crushed. People were
But
crushed when he wasn't going back for the second
I mean,
season.
that man, he ate
And
that
I think
role.
they announced it like not long after the first season had aired. So it was
This,
like
it
people
was
had
like
fell in
within
love with him,
weeks.
and then it was like boom, he ain't coming
Boom.
back.
Boom, he's done. He said no more.
Right.
It's like he instantly started interviewing, was like, oh yeah, that was it for me. One and done. I'm done. Next. Like,
What it
and
could
he's been
have
picking
been
up so
though.
many opportunities since then, but
Yeah.
he very wonderfully done. So Queen Charlotte was something that was needed because when you have set up this powerful queen who is the
Mhm.
voice of the royal house and she has this investment into the drama and the romance and everything going on with the people. And she's just so fabulous with it. Like her reads are nasty. Her reads are so nasty.
Yes.
Her wigs, her looks. She was just a character that it was so easy to be obsessed with. Everybody was in love with Queen Charlotte. And to get the backstory that we get with this show. So before we get into the actual plot, let's talk about cinematography. Let's talk about setting. Let's talk about setting up the scene because when I tell you they did it, they did it. I don't know if you peeped. Me and my flower mind, I catch all the plants.
You catch
So I
all
feel
the
like we're right here on this, but I was catching every flower arrangement, every bouquet, every vase,
they were
every
everywhere.
garden, everywhere. Like literally every family had like this huge garden,
Hmm.
and it's just so beautiful the way that they've made conscious decisions to put like a wisteria vine in front of the Bridgerton house, or in one of the very famous scenes of Queen Charlotte, she is trying to climb the wall
Yeah.
to escape. But it's like that is wisteria. It is, which is
It was
actually a
so
toxic plant.
beautiful.
but it's so beautiful. And it's one of those plants that in the South we see a lot of. You see it just on the freeway. You see it anywhere. Wisteria is a weed in our world, but it's beautiful. And the way that they were able to utilize, because that's honestly what a lot of that era would have looked like. They would have had a
Yeah.
lot of floral arrangements, and you would have had people investing a lot of time and energy into cutting flowers, fresh flowers for the queen every day, fresh flowers for the duchess, for the duke, for the lady, for the lord, giving and seeing how expansive their staff is, to get all of these things. There definitely would have been so many plants everywhere, and that just excites me.
The orange trees, like that was one of my favorite rooms. The
I
room with all the orange trees was one of
loved
my
that.
favorite. And you know what?
Yes,
Oddly, I love the observatory. Like I would love
I
to
love the
have an
observatory.
observatory.
I love
I
the
I don't
observatory.
blame him. I would have been sleeping in there too and just staring at the
Period.
stars and the
Staring
moon
at the
and the
stars.
planets. That is
But
when
even
he
like,
gave her that speech. Well, I don't want to get into the plot. When he gave her that speech when they were in the garden in the
uh-huh.
beginning, and I was like, why is he telling my personality? Like when he was telling
I
her all the things that he was into,
loved
I'm
it.
like, yes, I want to farm. I want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
science. I want to
Mm-hmm.
like I want to be
The
about observatory.
stars, the moon, the things. He's like, I'm a
Yes,
scientist, but I'm like, I'm also Farmer George. Love that.
right.
Because it was also the gardens for me. Like, the garden was beautiful. It was almost like a little maze, but it was
Yeah,
beautiful. Like how everything was just had this beautiful, and I love when there's conscious decision in, because this is a show about opulence. Essentially, it's about over the topness and
I love that
opulence.
too. Though
You
it's
know,
something about rich black women that just do it for me.
it just does it. It just does it because not
Opulent black
only
women do it for me.
we didn't just get Queen Charlotte, this beautiful black lead, we also got Lady Danbury, another beautiful
Exactly.
black female lead.
She
Like,
was gorgeous.
I've always loved Lady
Listen,
Danbury.
who played the younger her? When I
Ace,
tell you face
stunning,
hard, never did. Her
stunning.
face should be studied. Her
Hmm.
face was everything for me. Like she was gorgeous.
Absolutely stunning. And in very few shows, because one thing that this show does do that many shows can do it and make it confusing, you have flash forwards and flashbacks, and you're going here and there, and then you're remembering this, and you're going back to this episode, and you're going back, you're giving additional context to this. None of that was confusing about this show.
No, it wasn't. They
Every
did
time
it.
they did it, you could
It
tell
was
it was a conscious
very.
decision, and it made sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they caught the most beautiful shots of everything. And what I also liked about it is, with it being a romance, sex is understood. Sex is understood in a romance. Any type of romance, that's kind of what you know is going to happen at some point. And it was never trashy. I feel like shows have a
Yeah.
natural tendency to make it trashy and to make it just over the top and
Theirs was
hypersexualized.
passion. Like you
It
could
was passion.
feel the passion.
It was passion. It always felt like passion.
Yeah.
And it never just felt like lust,
Unless it was
And
Lady Danbury.
now Lady Danbury, but even then, I think that was more than lust. Like, and we'll get into it.
Maybe
We'll
for
get into
him.
it. I think for her though, I think she just knew that the reality was she could not have a married man.
Yeah.
She could not have. We'll get into it. Okay. So we talk cast. Like, they basically, virtually every role that we're gonna go over in just a second is doubled. So you have a past version and a present version. We've talked about Queen Charlotte. We're gonna get some more into her when we get into this plot, y'all. We talked about Lady Danbury. We love her, and I loved her from Bridgerton. She was always just like the
Like opulence.
the love that I have for Storm is kind of how Lady Danbury feels in Bridgerton for me. Like, she's got this, it's an elevated role of wisdom. People go to her. Like, she's a leader, but at the same time, she's working behind the scenes. She's thinking ahead. She's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. Like, she is that mind that is just so brilliant that most people couldn't even fathom what she's actually, where she is in the timeline. She's always a few steps ahead, and she's never doing what you think she's doing. And I love that about her, because it's not calculating. As in, some people, it would be very calculated, it'd be manipulative. For me, I feel like with her, and yes, semantics, but with her, I would say it's the mastery of strategy. She's very strategic, and I love that. Makes her, and again, nasty
you have
reads.
to be as a woman in that time period. You have to be strategic.
You'd have to be. You have to be very, especially as a single one. We're gonna get there. So next we've got the Queen's man, Brimsley. Brimsley is another character who In Bridgerton, you don't get a lot of information about him. You get the occasional chime in. He might say something about, what's going on with the gossip in the town. The queen might ask him a question. He might respond. But in those times, the servants of royalty, the servants of lords and ladies, did not have much freedom to say what was on their mind. They didn't have much freedom to really speak freely, and not just speak freely, but act freely. And getting his subplot, his sub story with the King's Man, it's interesting because we know that our rainbow brothers and sisters were existing back then. It was one of those things that makes you think about how dangerous it was to exist back then, and how everything had to be secret, and how everything had to be done a certain kind of way. And seeing I'm gonna come back to what I would consider one of the saddest scenes for me, and it involves Brimsley, and you probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Does Brimsley remind you of George from Grey's Anatomy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Because essentially, Brimsley, it's crazy that you say that, because who George wanted, or who the actor that played George wanted George to be, is essentially who Brimsley was for Bridgerton. And who Schmidt is now for Grey's.
Yeah.
That's who he wanted to be in Grey's, and they told him no. And so it's interesting. Yes. It's interesting that now, not only has that's actually part of why he ended up leaving Grey's. The Isaiah Washington and the homophobic things he said to him, but he had been advocating for a long time for them to allow George to be queer, because he is. And he said he would feel more.
Why couldn't George do it? Kelly and Eric.
I don't know.
You know what? It's
because
different for
I would
women.
say it's different for women, and I would also say it was a time. I don't know
acceptable.
that Grey's would have been as popular with it being, because you have to think that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's why.
10 years ago,
I was like,
So it would have been a lot to have two queer characters. You'd have this married couple break up, and both of them are queer now. It would have been a lot for primetime TV to showcase that and publicize it.
That would have been a good story.
It would have been so revolutionary.
And it's not unrealistic for two people to be each other's beard. It's not unrealistic.
It's not. It's not. Oh, that could have been a whole storyline. There could have been a whole storyline.
That's all. Like, that would have been so
Shonda, take notes.
Girl, for the next one, it's 2024. On the next one.
Come on now. But okay, so we talked Brimsley. We got private. we got Queen Charlotte. We got Brimsley. We got Lady Danbury. We also have the King George.
Yes.
And going into it, I don't know that I expected to like him as much as I ended up liking him.
And I really liked him.
I really liked him a lot. And then getting the context behind why the King has been missing, because you watch the first two seasons of Bridgerton,
where it was just him, and they showed us all of what had been
going on. So let's get into it. Let's go ahead and start breaking this plot down, because I feel like we're talking around it, and we're just going to get into it. So the show kicks off with a bang, because we've got this young princess coming from Germany, biracial, we'll say that, light-skinned, and she's having a conversation with her brother, who is, the prince of this part of Germany, and he's basically telling her, so get changed, because you're going to get married. The king has picked you. The king of England has picked you, and it's you, girl. It's you. It was always you. And we finna go take you to England now. Yes, thumbs up for that. We finna take you to England now, girl. So, and she's basically like, the way, because she was raised by her brother, and this plays a lot into the type of character that she is. So when you guys watch this, just realize they are setting up her personality. She was raised to be highly independent, to be highly intelligent, to question, to wonder, to strategize, to be active. That's how she was raised. She was raised by her brother to be that. And he makes a comment where he's like, maybe I did you a disservice allowing you to read so many books and allowing you to be, your own woman, because now you're not falling in line. You got to do this. And she's not understanding why. And I think that for me was the first aha moment I had watching this show, because at that time, historically, and I'm talking our actual history, at that time, marriages were about alliances between nations.
Exactly.
And I could see someone in her predicament being like, but I don't want to. I don't care what his people need. I don't care about him. I want to stay here with my folks. Why I gotta go? Why I gotta go?
Yeah.
And her brother puts back in her face like, you don't understand that if you don't do this, there's a possibility we could be at war with the greatest nation in the world at this time. Like, this is to protect our people for the rest of ever. If you do this, it will form an alliance that protects our people. We need you to do this. And there are probably so many women and some men who made those sacrifices for their nation. It wasn't about love. We have the luxury of love, of picking people for love now. And there's still places where there are arranged marriages, you know, but this was the standard, was to arrange marriages for your children. Mind blowing. How much independence.
I feel like somewhere in the middle is like what is needed, because to an extent, and even if you think about that time, like, as a woman, your best bet is to find the best bet and level up. You have to marry up. That's your way up. Unless you found some clever way, you make boots, so you a seamstress or something. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what making boots got to do with it, but I don't know if you kinky boots. I don't know. But unless you found a way to finagle your way into having money without all of that, your best bet, and even those women who were born into royalty, who were princesses and stuff, their goal had to be to marry up and create an heir. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, on the one hand, love is cool, but in that time, if you just don't happen to look up and love somebody decent that actually got something, you don't have the luxury of being worried about love. Like, girl, you got to secure your life.
You got to secure your life and the bag and the lineage and the nation. Absolutely.
Like, what? Because that is, back then is when I would advocate being a gold digger. Girl, secure your bag. Because I can't help you.
It was a very different time, like, because there were so many, and it's interesting, which is why we have to break down Bridgerton at some point, because they really get into the societal rules and how things were done, what the expectations were, and how different it was for men and women, and how that still is upheld to a certain extent today, for sure. But seeing, and I'm not at all to discredit how much further we have to go when it comes to women's rights, but we have come a long way. There is still a very long way to go, but we have come a long way, because there are so many rights that women have now, even just the right to speak freely. There's so many rights that women have now that it could have had you hanging. It could have had you in the gallows. It could have had you stoned. It could have had you burned at the stake. It could have had you disowned from your family, thrown out on the streets, exiled from the city. Like, all of that could have happened just by being too independent, just by thinking a little too freely. And what I like about this show is what's different is that they have decided to almost create this pocket universe where things went differently. It's almost like they should have started the show with, imagine things went differently, ... We present Queen Charlotte, because everything about how they set up this show and how, because it is a fiction with history connected to it, everything they did to set up this show and to set up this era was really this idea of, what if things were different? What if we integrated a lot sooner?
It was a great experiment.
It was, and that's what they called it, the great experiment, because you've got this young woman who, and I think that was also an aspect of the great experiment. You got this young woman who is of color. She's brown. she's much browner than I thought.
More blood.
Just like brown, but she's brown. Oh, that was, oh my God.
She touched her face, like rubbed.
She's brown. I mean, that was, we were right here with that.
In our world, she ain't even that brown. His sis is not that brown.
She is red.
Like Danbury is brown.
She is yellow. She is every bit of yellow. But it was so interesting, because you've got this woman of color marrying into the royal family. And not just, and she is of royal blood, but marrying into the British royal family.
Yeah.
And then when they did that, they were having a conversation, you know, because for those who don't know how Britain runs, and ran for a very long time and still essentially runs, is the royal family. Now they have a lot less power than they used to, but the royal family used to be the government. And there was the establishment that was the royal family, and then there were the actual members of the royal family. And the royal family would be those who were the establishment would be those who are very ingrained into how the royal family functions, how they keep their power, how they spread, how they colonize, all of that. They, the optics, the communication and how they're related and how they're viewed by the public. A lot of that was run by the establishment that is the royal house, the royal family. And we see a lot of those workings. It gives you an idea of how things worked then, but even to a certain extent, as we've heard with like Meghan Markle and who's her husband? Harry, her husband? William, whichever one's her husband. I think her husband's Harry. Them leaving the royal family. But even when they left the royal family, they dropped books and they did interviews and they talked about there's a difference.
He was like, she's right.
Right. Come here, girl. Come here, gal.
She is brown.
But that's what they said. It's like, what will the babies look like? Will the babies be too brown? Like that, and that is essentially what we're seeing play out here. So it's a what if this happened 1,000 years ago almost? What would it have been like? And I like the idea that when they brought this new princess in to marry the king, and she's of color. I don't remember I think it was the Dowager Princess who would be the king's mom. I think it was her idea where she was like, well, we should give titles to people in the time that look like her. We should give them titles so that the people in her court can at least look like her. They can represent her and her difference. And we'll call this the Great Experiment. That woman was a marketing genius before the marketing geniuses began. Because let me tell you,
she was spinning,
whether or not she was
that experiment,
whether or not she was a villain is a whole different story. But she would spin. Marketing. She was a spinner. She was advertising before advertising. Or as they would say in the UK, advertisements. Before there were advertisements, she was the advertisement. She was also another character that was very brilliant in how they created her and how they crafted her impact on the show, because she was also one of those antagonizing forces for the Queen and for Lady Danbury, but we're going to get there. So they get married. She goes to meet this man, and she already has it in her heart, I can't stay here. I'm not doing this. Get somebody else to do it. So
you know what was weird to me though? For her to be so like educated and well read, she was so detached from like the reality of her identity.
Of who she is,
She's so detached.
But
how does she not understand like the impact of what's going on?
Do you know why? I have a theory. My theory is because she was royal. Because imagine, even if back home, the people who worked for her looked like her, they would have still been this clear line of distinction between me being the princess and you being the wash lady.
Yeah.
It would have always been her viewing the world from an elevated state. She would have always been viewing it from an elevated state. So her becoming queen,
even her with her being a princess, she seemed so detached from like even what was going on as a
with
royal.
her people.
I think maybe she just lived in the books. Maybe she was one of those people.
I think a lot of them were like that though at that time.
Kind of lived in the books, it was just oblivious to like all of us.
I think a lot of them were like that because until it was wartime, they did not know what was going on with the people. They didn't really care because they didn't mingle. Think about it. Even when she becomes queen and she talks about the fact that they don't host parties, they don't go out in the town, they don't go out and do this, that, and the other, and you're expecting me to just stay here. Like, ma'am, you weren't really doing that before. You were a princess before you became queen. And you weren't really doing that before, and it shows. Because as the show progresses, she sees the necessity of building bridges with people. And Lady Danbury becomes someone that she builds a bridge with. She's in her court. This is a black woman that is in her court that she is, beginning to build a friendship with. And one of those really powerful scenes is when they have a conversation and Lady Danbury is basically like, do you not realize that like how different things would be for you if you were not the queen? Like, are you not seeing us? Do you not see us? Do you not? And she kept saying, do you not see us? And man, did that just not hit extra hard?
Because I felt her. Like, I
I
felt
did
the same
too.
way the whole time. And it's like, and then on one hand, it's like, I had to remember too, like, she's also a teenage girl at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
17. Yeah.
like, and her whole world has gotten flipped upside down.
Mm-hmm.
She's just trying to get a grip on what the heck is going on right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she hasn't even got her feet on the ground to even think about the people. She's just trying to figure out what is going on in this house and in the queues. Because what is going on in the queues?
What is
Like,
going on in the queue?
why?
Somebody
Where's
let me
my
know what's going on in
husband?
the queue. Where is he? Um, it was interesting. Also, another thing that they bring up that I guess I'd never considered or never thought about deeply was prior to the advent of medication for people with mental health disorders or any type of disease. They were, everything was theory. They would have to theorize, oh, well,
Yeah,
maybe he's got too much. And this was during the time when they thought everything was a blood disorder. They thought
sure.
everything that you had to do with a particular type of color of something running through your body. So they were personalities designated. And that's actually something really interesting. If y'all have never looked into it, you've got to go back and look into some of the old world way personality tests where they did things like determine personalities, like the sanguine personality. You got too much blood. Or there was like one that was like, related to bile and one related to phlegm. And it was just all these really interesting. It sounds really weird, but it's really interesting. And they were off, but they weren't too far off from what would later on become a science of understanding personality. But
Mm.
at this time, you've got this woman marrying into this family, the royal family, and she's not understanding why her husband is not with her, why the king is not spending time with her, even on their wedding
Anyone.
night. Why is he not here?
Anyone.
He's like, yeah, this is your
Especially
house.
to meet
When he
like this
dropped her
new
off,
person, and then he'd be like, "All right, here you go. Yes, this is your house.
this is
Yep,
when
we're going to your
that to me. First of all,
our house.
that
Yeah, your
scene,
house.
no, that scene was crazy after the
Yeah.
wedding. Because, okay, before the wedding, I just have to say the first little scene where I'm like, okay, this is a good pairing was when she was trying to escape. After
Mm-hmm.
getting there, she's in the dress, she's there, and she's decided she's going to climb the
She's gonna
wall and
climb this
escape.
wall,
She hasn't met the king yet. She don't know what he looked like.
but he's
So
a
she's
troll.
out in the garden and she finds her a wall with some vines on it and she's like, yeah, I think I can climb this. I think I can take this wall and dip. Where was she going to go? Because, ma'am, you don't even know where you are. But okay. So she begins
How
climbing
far
the
are you gonna
wall.
get in this gown?
She begins climbing the wall, and he happens to be the one to walk into the garden and just happens to see her. And he's like, Miss, do you need help? And she's like, no, I don't need any help. I'm good. Actually, as a matter of fact, if you could come over here and give me a
Give me a
boost so I
little
can get
boost.
up over this wall. And he's like, why do I need, he's like, I'm not going to do that. Why do you need a boost? Like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm dipping. Because clearly y'all's king has to be a troll. He got to be ugly. He's got to be vile. Something's going on with him. He's got to be disgusting, and I'm not going to marry him. And he was like, what makes you think that? She's like, well, nobody said anything. He's avoiding me. I haven't met him.
They
I don't know what
literally
he looked
would not
like.
say anything.
Would not say anything. Anytime she asked a single question, they were
And he
always
said,
speaking
"Y'all
in
gonna have
circles.
some good children." That sounds like he's a troll.
Exactly. So she's just under the impression he's hideous, he's stupid, and he's not a good person. And she
Mhm.
does not realize she's having a conversation with him. And in their conversation, it was enough for them to have that spark for her to stay.
Yeah.
And I don't know, every time they had interactions like that, I would catch myself just smiling at them.
It was so
It was
cute.
so cute. It was such a beautiful
They had good
interaction,
chemistry on camera. They
such
really
good chemistry. Even their chemistry off camera was wonderful too. When they did interviews when Queen
did.
Charlotte came out and they
I
were doing
didn't.
press, oh, they had wonderful, like you can just tell they enjoy working with each other. Like they have really
Mhm.
good just natural work chemistry. She as they they're building this relationship and she decides to stay. I think it was just so interesting because knowing their personalities separately, anybody from the outside with like a watcher perspective is like, oh, it makes sense that they're going to be perfect together. They're literally going to fit together like a
Yeah.
puzzle piece. Um, but there's so many other parts of the puzzle that we don't have yet. And one of the big parts of the puzzle is that George is suffering from a severe mental health disorder, something
Yeah.
that I'm thinking he might have had schizophrenia or he might have been bipolar. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm thinking it could
Because
have been one of those.
I didn't feel like it was schizophrenia, but I wasn't really sure what it was. I would lean maybe towards that he was having manic episodes
Mm-hmm.
that were like more so like anxiety induced,
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe that's why it presented a little differently.
I don't know.
But I don't think I don't think.
I think it's
I mean,
schizophrenia.
I'm not a psychiatrist, so I
I'm
don't
not either, but the
actually
reason I think it's
know.
schizophrenia is because of the hallucinations. That's one of the trademarks
Oh
of
yeah, I forgot
he
about
had
that
he had
part.
a lot of hallucinations, and that's one of the trademarks of schizophrenia. And it was almost like he was. It's not like he was a different person, but he was a different aspect of his personality when he would be in his episodes. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was Farmer George, he was Scientist George when he was in these episodes, and everything that he did was from that scientific lens that he studied. He was always relating back to the moon. He was always relating back to
Mm-hmm.
Earth. It's almost like other
Mm-hmm.
people didn't really exist in this universe for him until they identified themselves as celestial bodies. And it was it was interesting because we see as the show progresses, he does have this wall up. And
Mm-hmm.
even that night when he drops her off on their wedding night, that is still one of those scenes to me where I'm like, I would have reacted the exact same way she did. Like,
Like, got
so
you,
I got
heard,
you. May I
heard.
be dismissed, Your Majesty?
Okay, you're
Like,
not.
and he was like,
Thank you,
Charlotte,
Your
no,
Majesty.
Charlotte. She was like, my king. Like,
I would
I
have laid
was
on so thick.
every bit of the petty that she
Petty boot.
had because he kept saying, no, like, your house is here, my house is in Q. She's like,
Every time she said "our," he just kept casually going,
and he
"Yeah,
would
it's your
just keep being
house.
like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
your
it's your
house.
house.
And she's like she was basically
This
like,
is
I don't
yours.
understand. I don't understand. And she's like, is this
Why
the
would
way
you
it's
say
gonna
"our"?
be? And he was like, yeah. And then he even said to her at one point, like, I am your king. And she said, oh, say less.
Not said, yelled.
He
Because
did
once
yell
you
it.
get loud, heard,
Heard.
heard.
Yeah, that's what it gave was heard. Every bit of her reaction gave heard. And then to watch over the course of the season, her understand why he was so shielded when
Mm-hmm.
that one of the harder episodes for me to watch after they had when he decided because they were warring after they fell back in love and she got to see the observatory and all of that. And then they had the beef where they didn't want to see each other and they just met on even
Mm-hmm.
days to try and
Even
create this
days.
baby.
Even days.
It's an even day. But it was so interesting because every time they met, you could tell that they had this severe passion for each other. Like
Yes.
it
All that
was it
passion
was
built
all
up.
that passion. It was just built up
All that
passion every single
emotion.
time and that they were
Mm-hmm.
really missing being with the other. But it was like he had
He was
made it very
scared.
clear. He was terrified. And it was interesting when she finally allowed him or when she finally said to him like no more even days. Like let's just I need you to be here. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
with you. Like, so if I need to move to Q, I will. Or if you trying to stay up in this crib, you can. But like, this isn't working. And the
Yeah.
night he
Exactly.
decides he's going to stay, it's interesting because as they give more insight into his mental health struggles, I realize that every time he had a powerful emotional day or moment, it
Yeah.
triggered an episode.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. It seemed anxiety induced. Like anytime something brought him any type of anxiety, it just
And
kind of took over him.
that's really why I think it was schizophrenia because
Mm-hmm.
just with my experience with individuals with schizophrenia, that's kind of how it works. It can be a really good day or really bad day, but going through a lot of emotional energy can
Mm-hmm.
trigger an episode.
Yeah.
And it was really tough watching that first one, but you could tell that they were soulmates because of how she responded. She followed
Yeah.
him. She called out to him a couple times, but
Mm-hmm.
then when she realized that something wasn't quite right, she just followed him. She told them, no, I got this. You stay where you are.
Yeah.
I got this. Like, we're going for a walk. Like, we're going
Yeah.
outside for a walk. Don't worry. I got it. And to watch, I can't remember the guy and I think his name started with an H, but I can't remember the King's man coming out
Mm-hmm.
there having dealt with these episodes before trying to calm the king down and it literally being only her that could get him down and them having that moment where he's like, Venus is here. Venus, I see you. And she's like, no, I am Venus. Like it was, I mean, that's just one of those, I remember the first time I watched it, I was just there with my mouth, like, I was just like mouth
It was so
open.
beautiful
It
because
was
like she was the safe
beautiful.
space for him.
She was the
He felt
safe
safe
space
with
for
her,
him. Exactly. And then
and
it's
that's why
like
he was
that
able to calm down.
that safety continued to build throughout the show because every
Mm-hmm.
moment that they had where she let him know, I am the safe place for you. I know, like, I am your person. And I think somebody even said that which made me think of Grays. Somebody said that on this show, and I also heard it on Station 19,
Was
which
it
I just like to think of
was
it.
it his mom when they did the at the ball?
Yes, I think
When
it
she
was
was looking at him when she was talking about how happy he
how happy
was?
he looked. Yes, but it was like that was his person. Like he found his
Mm-hmm.
person, and there were these beautiful moments throughout the show where she just continued to prove to him that she's that person. The scene
Yeah.
that got me, because this, like watching it for the show, this was my second or third watch of Queen Charlotte, so I'd already seen it. But the first watch, when I first watched that show through, the scene that got me and I cried, like, was when she got on the floor when they were older, because he was in the
Under
middle
the
of an
bed.
episode under the bed.
Yes.
Every time that gets me. I mean,
And then
I
like
got goosebumps
flashback
thinking
to
about
when
it.
they were young, and then
And
it
it's like they're looking at
yes.
each other, but this is what's interesting to me, because at this point he's in like a serious mental health
Mm-hmm.
space where he's seldomly lucid. He spends
Yeah.
more time in his episodes than he does out of them,
Which is
and
understandable as you
which
get
is
older
understandable
too.
at being older. And then for
Yeah.
her, she is, the Queen of England.
She's in her prime.
She's in her, she's a mother. She's ruling the nation.
He's 62 unmarried
And,
king.
but there's this parallel that I noticed, and that just really kind of dropped in my heart and my spirit thinking about the show. They both kind of stopped aging with each other at a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
because at some point she just becomes the Queen of England. She is the Queen of England who has to run everything, and she remembers the George that was lucid. In his mind, whenever he remembers her, he goes back to the George that was lucid, that younger, and he sees her as her younger self. So for me, it was the beauty of them being on the floor, seeing each other as their younger selves, because in her
Mm-hmm.
mind, that's when he was his healthiest. In his mind, that's who he remembers.
Yeah.
When I say beautiful cinematography, the symbolism was always, like they got it
And that's
nail on
the
the
true
head.
meaning in sickness and in health till death do us part.
That's exactly what it
That's
was.
the true meaning of that.
Exactly that.
That's what unconditional love and
Looks like.
genuine
Mm-hmm.
love looks like.
Yes.
I
Y'all,
don't know what everybody feels.
there's so many
You know what
points
frustrated
in
me
the
though?
show. What's that?
The thing that frustrated me is like when I was watching, I'm just like, as people, like we make stuff so different. Like communication really just it could solve. All he had to do was just say something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the one hand, I understand like at that point in time, the king can't be sick.
Can't be sick.
Those
Can't be
days,
mad.
the king has to be the
Mm-hmm.
pillar of health and wellness. The king
Mm-hmm.
cannot be sick. But I just wish that like because she kept she was literally like coming to him begging him like just tell me what is going, like she was trying
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I hate the way that like society makes men feel like they have to be like this strong rock and there's nothing wrong and we just solid and we don't got no
emotionless
problems. And if I got problems nobody can know, this gotta be I can't tell nobody. And it's like if he would have just carried that with her, and because she wanted to carry it
she
with
wanted
him.
to carry it with him. She did.
She wasn't going nowhere. She just want to know what's going on. That's all.
I low-key feel like we could get a second season, because in the first season we only saw the birth of one child, and they have like 8 children.
They have 65.
Right.
I think they said she had 15.
Yeah, they have a lot of kids. It's like 13, 15, something like that. They have a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see more of that.
Yeah.
I think that there were also some really powerful scenes. Like I think about Lady Danbury and how much I loved getting this backstory for her in this season. But
that's a whole other spinoff.
That's a whole other spinoff. And then like her husband, Lord Danbury. First of all,
their dynamic was so interesting because
wasn't
there would be moments
mm-hmm.
where that would be so, or like moments where she would like be so genuine and loving towards him, which was so weird to
loving
me.
toward. Like I will say
like
for me,
told him, when she told
you're just as good as them, laying in bed. She's like, don't you ever think that you're just as good as them. And she grabbed his face and told him, oh, goosebumps. That was one of my favorite scenes with them, because most of the time the scenes with him I did not like him. He was a caricature that reminded me. You know who he reminded me of? He
Who?
reminded me of Mr. or of Steely's dad
Mm,
from The Color Purple.
yeah,
That's who he
yeah,
made me think of. Like legit from the makeup, the prosthetics, all of that. That's who he made me think of. And I just did not like him off rip. They made him really ugly.
they did.
And, they made him real ugly. But even when the truth comes out after his death about the finances and her having to get creative, one of my
Hmm.
favorite scenes comes about because this whole show we've watched Lady Danbury almost like the queen, the king's mom tried to turn her into like this double agent. She tried to
Hmm.
have her in Charlotte's court, getting all the tea and bringing it back to her so they could know what was going on. Because in that time, the most important thing a queen could do for her nation was produce an heir. Once you
Yes,
produce an heir, you're solid, girl. You can sit
that's
back, you can
that's
chill.
pretty much the only thing you can do.
That's the
That's
only
why
thing
you're
you
here.
do. You're here to produce an heir
I'm
and to
here for
keep
that.
the lineage going. And so when the happy couple wasn't, they hadn't consummated their marriage, they hadn't been spending, hadn't had a true marriage night, wedding night yet, and Charlotte is confiding in Agatha, Lady Danbury. The princess, the dowager princess, the king's mom, is really just trying to use her as a double agent. So a lot of the show, we
Hmm.
get to see them having these sparring sessions where it's like these two ladies of class sitting across from each other on opposite sides of the argument and opposite sides of the table, waging a silent, calm, classy
A
war.
nice nasty one.
Nice, nasty war. I mean, back and forth, just like doing it with
Yes.
pinkies up, sipping tea. And one of my favorite scenes in the show was the scene towards the end when Agatha has the breakdown, when she realizes that she's overwhelmed by the weight of not just the weight of dealing with her own problems, but she's realizing the severity or even the future of the great experiment kind of lies on her. She has to take an active role in that. She's got to figure it out for her family and for the rest of the black people in the time.
Hmm.
And she has this moment where she breaks down in front of the king's mom. And they had been warring all this time. And for me, that was one of my favorite scenes because the dowager princess looks at her, grabs a handkerchief. First, she clears the room, tells everybody to get out the room. Clears the room,
I
grabs the
love when they be
handkerchief.
clearing the room. I don't know why.
I do too.
It was like
I
one of
do
my favorite
too.
moments when they would be clearing the room. I'm like, yes.
Because even when she cleared the room when he had that nervous breakdown, and she
Hmm.
was in there, he started, because if you notice, every single time that they just put this immense pressure on him, it's like his mind couldn't handle it.
Yep.
And when he started talking crazy, and she was like, everybody clear the room, clear the room, clear the room,
Out.
everybody out, and kicked everybody out of that room except for
I want to clear
the
a room
king's
like that
man.
one day.
I do
I don't
too.
know
I
why.
do
I just want
too.
to clear a room.
Everybody
Everybody
out. Everybody out. I loved it.
can't wait.
But she cleared the room. She pulled the handkerchief out, which I loved. I love the true to era location of things like handkerchiefs because they did not have traditional pockets as we do. Because of all the layers of what they wore, there was creativity in where men had handkerchiefs, where women had handkerchiefs, and her pulling that handkerchief out of the fold of that dress that had a pocket inside of it, 10
And
out
we
of
love a
10.
good pocket.
That was
We
that
love
was
a dress with a
brilliant
pocket.
detailing. Brilliant detailing. But she pulls it out, she gives it to her, and basically tells her, you gotta stop. Stop all of this. Like, I've enjoyed our little witty remarks and banter back and forth. I've enjoyed it's brought me amusement to have this little war sparring with you back and forth. You are too powerful for me to be watching you cry, talk about your problems. I don't care. I don't want to hear what you're going through. I don't want to know. You need to pull yourself together. Because if any of this is to go on, you're gonna have to. You're just you got to get it
You have
together,
to get it together.
girl. Get it together, and then for her to pull it together and then make her demands.
Hmm.
I mean, what can you say?
And it's so crazy even watching it because it kind of shows you like that breakdown in the dynamic between women because it's like you kind of had to emotionally shut yourself off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like to emotionally shut off even in relationships. And so it kind of sets a precedent. It shows, and it's why to this day, people are still having these debates and conversations about gender roles
Mm-hmm.
and providing and 50-50 and all this stuff like that. And it's like, it's crazy to me because it kind of shows that like socially, even though it feels like there's so much evolution, mentally people still are not really evolving. It's just taking shape in another form to fit whatever, modern day looks like.
Yeah.
But it's still the same things rooted. Like people debate now about, now it's like frowned upon to marry for money, whereas that's always been
That's what it
you had to
was.
do.
That's what it was. We just called it
That's what
different
you had to
things.
do.
We called it different
So
things
it's
before we
like,
called it money.
and
It was land.
that's how
It was
mothers raise
prestige. It was
their
status.
daughters. You got to marry up, sis. You got to marry somebody with something. And it's crazy now that, like, if you say it today, it sounds bad. You're a gold digger. But it's like, why wouldn't anybody want to be with somebody that got something? We should both have something.
Yeah.
We don't want to be having nothing, right?
Absolutely.
You don't want to, if you got something, you would want somebody with something. Not nothing.
Not
Not
nothing.
just
No,
the
absolutely.
right deal, as Tyler Perry was saying.
Absolutely. As
But
he
it's
would
like,
say,
it's
right.
just so crazy how when you watch period pieces, it connects the way things are, but at the same time, it just blows your mind.
Because,
That,
and for me, it's like, it's
we've evolved, but we
twofold.
haven't.
It's twofold because you see how far we've come and you see how many things have stayed the same. Like at the
Yeah.
same time, it's a juxtaposition of like, wow, we really have like pants. Wow, we really still do that. Like,
It's like we're changing things, but our mindsets aren't evolving. We're not reprogramming.
There's a parable there. There is a parable there. Because in spirituality, we have conversations about you will keep getting the same lesson until you learn it. The same lesson will come back until you learn it. And you'll wonder, why am I going through this again? Why am I going through this again?
Yes.
Do something differently.
And we just write it off as, oh, history repeats itself. Well, why?
Because you didn't learn the lesson, boo-boo. You did not learn the lesson. Of course history repeats itself.
We just write it off like, oh yeah, of course, history always repeats itself.
Yeah,
like,
you repeat a grade when you fail it.
And so flippant, like it's the norm. To just
Next
keep
time,
going
when people say that, we got to start being like, yeah, and when you fail a grade, you repeat that too. So,
okay.
Period.
And she has never.
Ever. Love that. There is one other love story that happens there are two other love stories that happen. While we're on the topic of Lady Danbury, her husband dies during the show. And that was, I think, his death was one of the funniest.
It was so funny when she
realized and whispered to the
you don't have to prepare the baths anymore.
Cora, we'll be taking fewer baths. Like, she's like, you enjoy your bath, ma'am. She's like, no, we'll be taking fewer baths. And then she finally was like, when she finally realized what she said, she's like, we're free. And she's like, we're free. Like,
and they kind of
giggling. And she's like, okay. She's like, okay. Good luck. Go get yourself ready. Oh my God. Oh, I must make sure my lady is what did she say? That she's in a dignified state before you. I will come back for you all. That was so good. Because even their dynamic was another one of those. Like, I like when serious shows put relationships with comic relief. Like, because even with the Queen, her relationship with Brimsley, they had some comic relief. She would always kind of abruptly end the conversation and remind him, you work for me. Hang on, shut up. I don't even want to see
when she would she'll be walking down the hallway and she'll casually stop and then step to the left and then ready to go again.
I loved it. She would do the electric slide to make sure he was doing it. Like, I loved it. But after Lady Danbury's husband dies, and prior to that, she'd actually met a character's dad, a character that we see, Violet. Love Violet Bridgerton, by the way. She's I love her from the main Bridgerton universe, but I especially loved her in this show. Getting that additional context to how liberal of a woman she was growing up and how liberal of a dad she came from, who empowered her to be such a confident, independent thinking woman that when we see her as the mom,
I said because her mama was a hater.
Mama was a hater. Pure, and I honestly feel like the mom is on one of Grey's Anatomy. She was on one of the Grey's Anatomy arcs. I feel like she might have been on Grey's or something. I just recognize that woman's face, and I feel like I never liked the character she plays. I feel like I never liked her characters. She could have been Ava. I don't know, but I feel like I never liked her characters. But the Lord Ledger, who was Violet's dad, was just this man who was just ahead of his time. He was very much ahead of his time, and he was so cool. One of the more beautiful moments with him besides what happened with him and Lady Danbury. One of the more beautiful moments with him though was when they were at the dance that night,
Mm-hmm.
the ball at her
The
house,
ball.
the
Yeah.
ball that the
First
Danburys
ball.
hosted. Beautiful, the first ball of the
Yeah.
season. And they hosted this opulent ball. The king and queen came and they were dancing, and he made the decision to be again ahead of the curve by going and choosing Lady Danbury to dance with instead of his wife. And it
Mm-hmm.
created this wave of interracial dancing on the dance floor. And it was beautiful. It was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful because scenes like that are moments when you realize just how powerful it is, how powerful representation is. But also something we didn't talk about was the music of this show and the music
Yeah.
of even Bridgerton. Y'all, I did not know I needed an orchestral version of Girls Run the World by Beyonce. I did not know I needed to hear Halo or Seven Rings or I Will
Halo was
Always Love You.
so good.
All of them were so beautiful, especially I Will Always Love You. First of all, it's just a beautiful song by itself, but hearing them play it and hearing this symphony, this
Mm-hmm.
orchestra play out these songs in what would feel like old classic Baroque style music, it was just breathtaking in some scenes where it's
Yeah.
like I would have to go back. Deja Vu, I feel like was actually one of them too. I feel like Deja Vu was one of the songs
I
they
don't know if I
did.
remember.
I feel like they did Deja Vu in one of the episodes, but it's just like every time they took there were a lot of modern songs they take and revamp
Mm-hmm.
for Bridgerton and for Queen Charlotte, and I love that. It's one of my favorite details because it gives you a reminder that yes, this is made in the modern era from a different lens, but this is
Yeah.
maybe what it could have
Because I
sounded a
think
little bit
the
like this
first
back
ball was
then.
what? If I Ain't Got You, Alicia Keys. That was
Yes,
the first
Alicia
ball,
Keys.
right?
If I got you, yes, that was the dance that the king. Yes,
Yeah.
same dance,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And I just love their interactions, Charlotte and George with each other. I just love them so much. But Lady Danbury and Violet's dad, Lord Ledger, ended up having this heated exchange, as Duran Bernard would call it, heated fellowship. And it's something about romance, true heated romance. It just does it for me. That conversation at the door when she, like everything that
Yes.
she was saying he could not do, and he's like, I'm not doing that. I would never. I wasn't even thinking about that. He's like, I'm not even here. Oh, threw myself out
Period.
into the floor. Out
Okay.
into the floor. I was like, yes, he's not even here.
And
Like,
it's
it
like
was so good.
that's what like the sap in me. I just love like steamy, passionate
Steamy,
romance.
passionate
Like
exchange. It was just so
yeah.
good. It was so good. And it was like, again, I love that it's not trashy. Like they
Mm-hmm.
always do it in a way that is true to the era, true to the genre, but it's also, there's class and there's
Yeah.
cinematography about it. It's done in a
Even in
way
the
that
way Queen Charlotte, she was always in her gown every time. Even in
every
the water,
time,
she had her gown on.
even in the water, come on now, even in the water, the water. Uh, but there was another romance in the story that I think is also very relevant that it's being Pride Month. And that was the story of Brimsley and the King's Man,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just it created for me one of the saddest scenes of the show outside of deaths, but it created one of the saddest scenes for me. And that was, there's this transition moment where, as one being the King's Man, the other being the Queen's Man, their jobs had them literally with the royal that they were responsible for all the time. Like many times people who were in those roles did not marry because they did not have
Mm-hmm.
time. Like
Yeah.
I'm literally spending 20
I gotta
hours a
be right
day
here. Yep.
with this person,
I
so
gotta be
what
there
would I
every
look
day for
like
tomorrow.
only having 4 hours a day for anybody else living in the castle, being there all the
Yeah.
time. And so, there's a moment where they're at a ball and Brimsley and I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but the other guy,
I
they
can't
come
remember.
out. It's something with an H, like Helmsley or something like that. I don't know. Something, I feel like it's with an H, but whatever his name is, they dance. They have this beautiful moment of dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful because they did it, away from everybody where no one could see them. And they got to share a dance that they never would have been able to have in public at that time. And it
Yeah.
was beautiful. But my heart broke as the scene goes on and we see him dancing alone in the future, in the current day
In
of
the
the Bridgerton
yeah.
universe. And it was just so, I don't know. It did something to me as the hopeful romantic that I am, seeing someone who had love and lost it. And then like they're spending the rest of their life, even when he has that conversation with the queen and she's like, oh, Brinsley, did you ever marry? First of all, girl, why are you just not asking him this 50 years
And
into
girl,
y'all
you
knowing
know
each
the
other?
answer to
You
that.
know he ain't married nobody. You
Who?
know he ain't got no kids.
Who?
And she's like, did you ever take up a wife? And he was like, oh no, like who would have married me? And that was one of those scenes that it's just like, I don't know, it tugged at my heartstrings, because it was just like, he's like, who would marry me? Like, I'm always here. Like, who has time? And that's how he's saying it. It's like, I'm always here. Who has time for that? But being in an era where queer people didn't exist, or could definitely not publicly exist,
Right.
he's just very much like, girl, what do you think?
What are
No,
you
I ain't got
talking about?
nobody. I ain't got
But
nobody
you
but
know what,
you.
though? It also kind of leads to Lady Danbury's point that she made to Violet of like, you're fortunate though. Like
Mm-hmm.
you got, even though you didn't get to marry, you still got to experience love, even in your, job role that you're in, where most people wouldn't even get to experience that because you're 24/7 with the queen.
Mm-hmm.
You got to experience it.
He did
You
get
know
to
what I'm saying? You
experience
got
it.
to have that passion. You got to have that memory of being able to dance in the courtyard and all. You know
But
what
I
I
don't
mean?
know.
So it's
Would you
like,
say that he experienced love?
he did. I think
I
he
don't,
did.
because I feel like there was some love about it, but I wouldn't say it was unconditional love. Like they were only in love when he was in the other guy's favor. Because when that other guy was taking his job serious,
But
no, I
that's the
can't.
thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like it was the type of love that they would be able to have in their situation.
That
Because
makes
at the
sense.
end of the
Yeah,
day, even if they weren't, for the king and queen at that time, they still would never
have
have,
been able to have a
you know what I'm saying, the same type of love
relationship.
that
Yeah.
straight folks was having.
Mm-hmm. That's
So it's
true.
like it still would have been that same type of situation because if they weren't there, they probably still would have been expected to take up wives and they would have been sneaking off. It would have been the
That's
same
true. It would have been the
situation.
same. Yeah, that's true. That's
So
very,
it's like
very good point.
it's the type of love that he was able to have. But I think being able to experience it at all was
Is a
the
gift.
fortune. You know what I mean?
Was
It's
a
the
gift.
fortune
Yeah,
in it
that
because
was the
there are
gift of
people
it.
who don't get to experience, or people who like Lady Danbury who loathe the person she was with. So everything she's doing is like out of the fact that I loathe you, and I know that you hate orphans. So guess what? Orphanage in your name.
Like the comeback queen, the
Yeah,
payback queen. Like I think that this show is so well done. I would heavily encourage anyone who has not seen it. It has been out for a little while now. Anyone who has not seen it, I would heavily encourage you to see it and check it out and see if maybe Bridgerton, like if you like it, you'll like Bridgerton. That's just the fact of the matter. It's definitely more niche
yeah,
than the rest of the Bridgerton universe. But if you like this, you will like Bridgerton. And I think that these are the types of shows that help add something different to the palette. They help add just something a little different into the rotation, give you something different to talk about, something different to think about. And I don't know, I feel like that what's the song What the World Needs Now is love, more love, sweet love, all of
yeah.
the loves. We need
That
more
is
of the loves.
literally what this world
What the
needs right
world
now.
we need to be operating from
Yeah,
more of a place of love. And for me, having watched the show, having rewatched the show, I was able to come back out and put myself back into a position of love, back into a loving space, so that I could give more of that. Like I
yeah,
didn't realize how much I needed to consume this at the time that I have, and it just made me even more ready for the second part of season 3, because it's like I'm in a position where I know that that is feeding me and it's allowing me to
hmm
show up better for the rest of the world. So
I
I don't
love
know.
that.
I
I
don't know if
love
everybody's going to get
that.
that, but I feel like we got that. I feel like we got that.
Right.
Like it as a
And
millennial lover boy,
I've
lover
been like the
girl.
space that you're in now is, remember back in like, I feel like it was like maybe January. It was like right before Valentine's Day, and I was telling you, I was like, I've been such a lovey dovey, like I
Hmm.
couldn't figure out why. But it's like I'm just so open, and it's like my heart is just so open. It's so lovey now. It has
I'm
been like
back
that.
into the space, so I'm excited. I'm excited to be where
Yeah.
you were, like, because that's where I am now, and I don't know. I'm just loving on me a lot.
It's so
I've
much
been.
lighter. It's so much. And it's like, I think when people get hurt, your first thought is to like, I need to guard this place. I need to guard this. I need to
Wall
protect
up
this.
immediately.
I don't want to feel like this again. I don't want
Hmm.
to feel this level of pain again, or betrayal or hurt.
Hmm.
And so it's like you naturally just are like, I'm a little crab, so don't give me a reason to go in my shell.
Look, she's gone. She's gone.
You know, little crab legs going to
Look, legs gone. Then she's done. No,
out of there.
I
But it's
completely
like,
get that.
it's like I was saying, like my whole mantra now has been cool head and a heart of fire. cool
I
head
love
and a
that.
heart of fire. Because if you have a cool head, you can have a heart of fire. Because at the end of the day, if you're in balance with your head and your heart, you don't have to worry about or that fear of getting your feelings hurt or being in pain, because you can check your feelings and still make the best decisions for yourself.
Yes. Love
So it's
that.
okay.
I love that.
Everybody needs love.
Everybody needs love. That is the tagline for this episode. Everybody needs love. Y'all, we just want to thank y'all so much for tuning into this episode of 5011 Chronicles. Hope y'all have enjoyed it. Hope you're getting a little love in your life. And if you're not getting a little love in your life, go watch Queen Charlotte. Peace. We love you guys. And we're going to see you in the next one. And actually, next episode, we're just going to kiki. So y'all get ready. Come with your kiki shoes on. Come with your kiki shoes on, because it's going to be a kiki, y'all. Actually, before we get out of here, I have a for the culture. Oh my gosh. I have a for the culture. Y'all. So we're actually going to get into more of this in the next episode with our kiki. But there has been some new music coming out that I just can't let go without talking about some of this. I gotta tell you about some of it. And I'm gonna highlight two artists right now. And I'm just telling y'all, go and if you have not been listening to them, you gotta go. And I know I've talked about Duran Bernard before. I've been in love with Duran Bernard for a minute. He is one of my favorite voices. I love what he does. He is just so free, sang down. He dropped a new project. It's really good. It's called En Route. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next episode, but there's one song I really want y'all to go check out. It's called GPS. And I was telling Dee about this. I love this song because for me, as all of my best friends are women, I am very protective of my best friends, and I'm very protective of how they're treated and who they welcome into their space, not in like a weird, like controlling kind of way, but it's like I was taught by my mom how to love and how to be a friend and how to love from a genuine place. And we have a relationship that we just have unconditional love. Me and my best friends, there's no conditions to our love. So I expect that when they find a partner, that the partner has to at least meet what I'm doing, if not exceed what I'm doing. And I really prefer that they exceed it. I prefer that they exceed it.
Exactly. We prefer you exceed, but at the
At the bare minimum, you have to meet what I'm doing. I'm talking about opening doors. I'm talking about taking care of things, anticipating needs. So this is a song about that. It's a song that he's basically singing to his best friend's man or aspiring man. Like, hey, if you trying to get to her, you have to go through me. I'm the GPS to her, essentially, is what he's getting at. And he's like, I'm the standard for how she needs to be treated. So if you can't do what I'm doing, at least you need to hit the road and find you somebody else, because it's not gonna fly. I love the idea that there's a song like that out there, because I just think more people need to hear that. And secondly, Coco Jones has done it again. I love this woman's voice, because we have so many people in the music realm who have these beautiful high voices, and they give these high notes and they belt and they whistle, and that's lovely. There's time for it. There's a place for it. It's always been standard. We love that. Coco Jones comes in and she's definitely got some high notes in her. But what I love about her is the richness of her voice. Her voice is so rich, especially when she sings a little bit lower. And this song she just dropped is called Here We Go, Uh-Oh. Miss Jones, we need to have a conversation, because who in the hell told you to destroy their notes like that? Who told you to get up in that music video in that gorgeous gold get up and to dance like it was Alvin Ailey's dance studio? Who told you? Who told you had the audacity and the right to bestow upon us timeless, beautifully sung R&B? True R&B. That's what that was. And I am so flummoxed by, come on now, by the grandeur. Look, this one of the big words had to come out, by the grandeur and the audacity of said queen, Coco Jones. So I just have to say, if y'all have not been following Coco Jones' career, she has been doing so many remarkable things in music. She's a Disney girl. She does Bel Air, wonderful actress, beautiful woman, beautiful personality. Like, she's done things with the Terrell Show, non-problematic, but she is on something different with this music she's getting ready to drop. And I think she's preparing for an album. And I am going to be at that tour when it happens, because I need to be in the audience.
I'm kind of excited about like the direction that music is about to take. It
Hmm.
ain't fully took
It's
it
not
yet,
there
but
yet. It's
the
on its
stuff
way.
that the stuff that's in the works, that's on the way over the next rest of this, I'm really excited to see the direction music is going in, because even just
Girl.
the energy of people, like even amongst women, is this energy of like this camaraderie, and
Hmm.
everybody's bigging each other up. Everybody's support. Like I am loving what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing. People are getting creative again.
Hmm.
People are coming up with original ideas. I'm loving
You know who
it.
got me? You know who got me? I'm okay. I'm gonna highlight one more artist, and she's pretty established, but she's someone who's always been vocal, especially when it comes to things of political nature. Kaylani. I love me
Oh
some Kalani
yes, I love
so
this.
much.
Listen,
Have you heard
listen.
Next to You?
I've heard. Listen, I hear everything Kaylani says,
Same.
does.
Next to You. First of all, After Hours got me first because
Yeah,
it's so good. It's so good. I
good
listen to it
bro.
every day. It's so good. Next to You dropped, and I happened to catch the video first before I just listened to the song
I
because I
haven't seen
usually
the
do a
video.
blind listen. It's definitely a pro-Palestine video, and I love that she's always used her platform
Yeah,
to
because
call out the wrongs of the world.
not a lot of people doing it right now.
She has the
She's one
proceeds of
of
the
very few.
video going to support people in Palestine. She is ahead of the curve, as she always has been when it comes to advocacy. But
Yeah,
like this era that she's about to go through, that she's about to initiate within her own discography, I'm really excited about. Because not After Hours, Next to You sounds like nothing else I've really
hmm
ever heard. It's
yeah,
so different. And I like the changes because it's almost like abrupt changes. When I first heard it, I was like, I have to listen to that again because I couldn't fully comprehend everything that was going on. There was so much going on that was so unique and so different. As a writer, as a creative, as a producer, I got just so excited. Like
yeah.
I
And we
always tell people
definitely
about
haven't
baby
seen the
leaping.
best of her. Like I
Oh,
don't think
at
we've seen,
all.
because she hasn't even, like I feel like she's finally, like I feel like right now she's coming to herself. Like she's
Hmm.
grounded in who she is. I think she's grounded in like all of her being. I feel like this is like woman Kaylani.
Yes.
Like we're seeing her growth.
Grow.
We're
Hmm.
seeing her stable, mature, grounded, and really like in her bag. I
It's
feel
been
like
so
we haven't
progressive for
even
her.
begun to see the best from
She's progressed so beautifully because for
her.
me, my introduction to her was Sweet Sexy Savage. It was such a great album. It was so
Yeah,
delicious. I mean, there were
yeah.
so many bangers off of it. And even what she did for the Suicide Squad soundtrack,
Oh
Gangsta,
yes,
loved
Gangsta is
that
my
so much. Gangsta is my
jam.
jam. Honey is my jam. Like she's been putting out bangers for a while. But it was
Yeah.
like, for me, there was a shift when she put out Love Language. That album that had Love Language on it, I said, "Oh, she's headed into a whole different realm than a lot of the
Yeah.
other R&B girls because
Oh
she
yeah.
was writing from such a different like it's one thing to be an artist, it's another thing to be a lyricist, but to be doing those things and be a visionary and to be able to see things from a completely different lens, almost like she was writing with her third eye. Like
hmm
it was that's the best way I can put it. She was writing from a balanced chakra system, and you can see
Yes.
it and
You
feel
can
it.
see it. You
You
can
can
see it in
feel it
everything, even
in
everything
everything
she
she
does, like
does.
her performances or like all of it. You can see it. That's not
That's
like
another person I
she
would
hasn't
definitely
been
go see on
yeah,
tour.
we have
Like
not seen the best of her.
we haven't. So I'm so
And
excited.
I love
Y'all,
the direction
check
she's
out the
going.
musics. Check out the musics. We're going to get
Any
into so many
more?
more of them because I want to talk about Ira Star. I want to talk about the rest of Duran's project.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some more things going on musically and in the world because the world is ablaze per usual.
In this
Per
Milky Way
usual.
ghetto of ours.
Per usual, she's ablaze. So y'all,
The
thank you so much.
Magneto to shut down
Hmm?
just for 10 minutes. Just shut the magnetic field down for 10 minutes. just just shock the people for 10 minutes, Magneto.
I think we just need I think we are at the point that we do need a Thanos snap. Like
Just
maybe just
we just
25% first. Let's
because
just start there.
2020 didn't do it for the people. They didn't get it. It didn't click. It clicked for a lot of people. I will say that I'm seeing a shift. I love the
Hmm.
shift I'm seeing, but a lot of people it didn't click for, and it definitely didn't click in the most important places in society.
And
So
you know what's crazy is I bet you it did click. They're just choosing to be resistant
you
because
got a
there's no way
point.
they couldn't see it. There's no way they couldn't see what
There's
was going on.
no
There's no way they didn't see it. But y'all, we have held y'all up enough.
yes.
There is so much more that we're going to be coming back to in this next episode. So we thank y'all. We love y'all for tuning in to another episode with us this week. And we will see y'all next week with another episode of the 5011 Chronicles. Peace. Yes. And
Y'all,
balloons.
come on, balloon.
They just do what they